your health matters. And surely if your health matters, your freedom matters, specifically your personal autonomy to make choices about your health. I'm delighted to have with me Shawn Buckley, who's the constitutional lawyer and also the president of the Natural Health Products Protection Association. So a warm welcome to you, Shawn, for joining us today.
Oh, David, I'm so pleased to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Well, Shawn, it's amazing. We had our last conversation, I think, in October 2023, and we were talking about a very interesting thing that is going on right under our noses, and that's the whole issue of Health Canada, our government, working to essentially regulate out natural health products. It's kind of amazing. Like, this is huge ramifications in terms of, the need for people to be able to make their choices about what they choose in terms of remedies for their health. And you've been at the forefront of this with so many others right across this country from coast to coast. And, it's a remarkable story. And so, Shawn, I noticed that I even had the privilege of meeting you and your dynamic wife, Teresa, as you made this national trek, a health tour, if you will. So there's lots to catch up here. So can you tell us why you went on that national tour and where are things at in this country?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of fun. Thank you, David. So the Natural Health Product Protection Association that I'm with, back in 2008, like this has been going on. In my law practice, I've been fighting Health Canada. We're working on year 31, if you can believe it. I actually started as a lawyer acting for Health Canada, but had to switch sides. And back in 2008, to try and solve this problem, because Health Canada just adds more regulations, and they're actually trying to get rid of our natural health products or so truncate us that it's not meaningful, that we don't have a meaningful choice. And I'll kind of go into that in a little bit. But so we drafted this Charter of Health Freedom as a solution. And all the charter does is it takes the health rights that the courts already say that we have, and it lists them and says, listen, you have to adhere to them, both in your laws and in your actions, federal government. And then it creates a few legal presumptions, which are pretty important, one of them being that the best source of information about whether a treatment works for someone is the person themselves, which is really important if you're having to go to court and try and say, I really need this remedy, because the Department of Justice machine will have, 2 or 3 experts saying, no, you're only there because it's not approved, which means it's natural. Because our Health Canada only approves synthetic chemicals with a patent to treat serious health conditions. We can talk about that in a minute. So if those don't work for you and you're using something else, it's illegal. So you're using something natural, it's illegal. And if you go to court, what happens is the Department of Justice has experts to say, well, there's these approved treatments for your condition, and here's all the research on them, and they work. And what you're want to use isn't approved, and there isn't research, and you need to see a psychiatrist, you must have mental health conditions. And you can actually lose in court. Wow. If you even have the financial resources to go against those experts, you can lose with the court finding, well, you haven't proven, because the onus is on you to prove you actually need this, and that's ridiculous.
Okay, so this is kind of mind-boggling. So for thousands of years, people have used natural remedies. I think of Chinese medicine. I think of Aboriginal herbalists. There's all kinds of parties that have used natural remedies. And we've all gone into natural food stores and gotten things that have been helpful to us, like ginseng as an example, some type of herbal tea. You're saying that they're regulating this out of existence in Canada. Why?
Well, yeah, and just, to follow up on what you're saying, even most of the chemical drugs we use are just analogs of natural substances that they've tweaked, but that tweaking makes them dangerous. We've got these natural remedies that actually work better by and large than the chemical drugs, but because they're bound up with other things and a naturally occurring substance that we're actually made to, not react to, they're safer. So just to kind of follow up on what you're saying, but our whole model, our whole model is there to protect chemical drugs. Like, so let's back up. We finished the First World War. We had homeopathic hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
We had homeopathic doctors. We had other healing traditions. And we've all heard of the Flexner Report and Rockefeller getting together. It's true. I mean, every state and province basically passed laws or started enforcing laws they'd already passed that gave allopathic doctors a medical monopoly. And allopathic medicine is a healing philosophy. There's different healing philosophies.
Mm-hmm.
So, traditional Chinese medicine or doctors have a specific healing philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
Naturopathic doctors have a specific healing philosophy. Herbalists there's different healing philosophies. Now, the allopathic healing philosophy is whatever you do when somebody comes to you that's suffering, like you can stand on your head, you can do whatever you want, but don't you dare cure the illness.
Hmm.
What you're supposed to do is try to help them reduce the suffering by treating the symptoms. So this is important. It's crucial for people to understand. So the allopathic model that we're in is not there to actually cure. It's not there to solve why you're suffering. It is there to address the symptoms of your suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Well, David, not in a million years would a single Canadian, if we were asked, if we were given a choice, not in a million years would any of us say, hey, we're going to have universal health care. What healing philosophy should we adapt? Not a single one of
Mm-hmm.
us would choose the allopathic model, because if we're actually ill, if we have a problem, we want the problem solved. We don't want the symptoms masked. We don't want the symptoms reduced. We want the problem solved. Why are we
Mm-hmm.
unhealthy? Why are we chronically sick? We actually want to become healthy again. But by design, the federal government and the provincial governments have all colluded together to, for the longest time, outlaw these other healing traditions. And in most provinces, they're still outlawed, and to force on us in our universal health care an allopathic model.
Okay. So just to back up for a sec. So because the government has control over much of our health care, you're suggesting that your evidence is that we should enable people to have a choice of the kind of health care that they're going to have. So if they want to take, natural remedies to try to get at not just the symptoms, but deeper health issues, they should be able to have that choice. And you're fighting for that to continue.
Absolutely, but I'm just pointing out is most people don't understand what allopathic medicine is, and they don't understand that the other healing traditions were outlawed and are suppressed, and that we've been forced into this model in our universal health care. Like, we don't have a choice for universal health care. Like, whether you think universal health care is a great idea or not, how on earth did we end up adopting a model for universal health care that isn't trying to actually solve our health problems, but is trying to reduce our suffering by treating the symptoms?
Right. Okay, but this is very important to understand, that Canada is by and large an exception in the world in terms of this very narrow, limited view of healthcare. I know if you go to, say, Singapore, you can go into healthcare hospital that resembles more the Canadian model, but you can also go to a traditional Chinese medicine wing where you can get that type of choice as well. I mean, this is not uncommon in Europe as well, some type of variation. Is that what you're getting at?
Well, likely we're the most controlled country in the world, and likely the worst country in the world, and I would expect we have likely the worst health outcomes in the world. So, I mean, I haven't studied other countries, but ours is so tightly controlled. So we have a division of powers. So the federal government uses its criminal law power to say all drugs are illegal. And they do this under the Food and Drug Act. So what the federal I'll give you the Reader's Digest and then I'll explain in a little more detail. So the federal government has basically made it illegal for us to treat serious health conditions. So anything but the most minor of things, the federal government's made it illegal for us to treat ourselves with anything but synthetic chemicals that had a patent.
Mm-hmm.
And then the provinces have made it illegal, to basically use any other treatment modality in our healthcare systems. So, which is why, and we all intuitively know this. I mean, if you have to go to the hospital for anything, you know that you're going to be offered surgery and or synthetic chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
We all know this. So how it works at the federal level is the federal government makes everything a drug. So it defines drug in the Food and Drugs Act so broadly that it literally includes anything used to treat or prevent illness. So it means that in Canada, we're only legally allowed to use treatments that Health Canada bureaucrats say we can have access to. Isn't that
Mm-hmm.
interesting? So if they haven't approved something, which includes if somebody hasn't decided to apply for a license,
Mm-hmm.
we can't access it. Well, that's interesting. So all of a sudden, ginger tea is illegal. Vitamin C is illegal. Broccoli is illegal. Like anything used to address
Wow.
illness or prevent illness is illegal. So now we literally need Health Canada's permission for vital nutrients. And here's where it gets fun, is so Health Canada and to a lesser degree, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency have had control over our food supply for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And David, they have allowed in so many chemicals and so many toxins that, it's almost a rhetorical question for me to ask. Is it possible for a food to be more toxic and more dangerous than it is without the population popping? Like it's literally, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, it's literally like Health Canada's trying to see, well, how toxic can we make our food without the population rebelling
Wow.
against us?
So
I think we're there.
what's the evidence of this, Shawn? Like it sounds like almost a conspiracy. What's the evidence of
Well,
this?
David, you get a lot of views on your show. So let's say 500,000 people watch this show. Every single one of those 500,000 people, if we tested them, just to pick glyphosate as an example,
Mm-hmm.
every single one of us will test that we have glyphosate in us, even if we're eating organic, even if we're doing everything right to avoid glyphosate. We all have glyphosate, and we could pick hundreds of examples that we would all test positive for these chemicals that are not safe. So, yeah, why are Health Canada allows these chemicals into our food because the industry lobbies them to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And, if anyone believes Health Canada on safety, I mean, I'm just finishing up today a discussion paper on this cloned meat because that's been a live issue that, on November 13th, Health Canada announced that they would allow cloned beef and cloned pork into our food supply without any labeling.
Wait a sec. Hold the presses. What the heck is cloned meat?
So,
Shawn.
when like Dolly the sheep, so you take the genetic material, the genetic material in the nucleus of the animal you want to clone, and you take the genetic material out of the egg and you insert the genetic material from the animal you want cloned into the egg, and then you manipulate the egg with, electrical shocks and chemicals to try and make it a zygote, a fertilized egg. And a very small percentage of those will become viable eggs, and then you insert those eggs into, an animal's, uterus, and some of them will, become living animals. So you have a very small number of eggs that will be viable, and it's a difficult process, but that's a cloned animal. But David, and Health Canada says it in their document, their opinion document saying that this is safe. They say, well, the big advantage of this is to, if you want a biopharmaceutical or a genetic modification, then that's why this shines. It doesn't shine for getting meat because the animals tend to be more sickly, so you've got to give them more hormones and antibiotics and chemicals. None of us would want to eat cloned meat, but I'm just saying as an example of how we can't trust them. So they're saying it's safe to introduce cloned meat in food supply. Well, the known risks of cloned meat are genetic defects in the animal because the process invites genetic defects. organ defects and other anatomical defects. And then, for the animals that live, you're more likely to kind of over hormone, over antibiotic, over drug. So if you want to protect us from the dangers of cloned meat, assuming it's proven safe in the first place, well, you should be screening for genetic defects, anatomical defects, and do we have too much chemical in this animal because they're more prone to it? No additional testing. David, do you know how many human studies there are to show that cloned meat are safe? None. Zero. There's never been a human study showing that cloned meat of any description is safe. Do you know how many animal studies, safety studies there have been on cloned pork to show that it's safe?
Zero.
None. There haven't even been animal studies. There's been a few small little limited rat studies on cloned beef. There's really no safety studies showing that cloned meat is safe. No ethics boards would allow this. But yet Health Canada is basically wanting to force us to clone beef. I'm just using this as an example. Like, if you think they're there to protect you, like, just pick any food group, any issue, and look into it, and you'll go, wait a second, they're wrong.
Okay, yeah. So your point here is that we need to be skeptical about Health Canada's mandate, and their approach to regulation isn't so much, if I'm understanding your approach to the issue, is they're not about necessarily protecting your health so much, but regulating what's going into the larger system on behalf of what? Manufacturers, the chemical industry?
Your question is actually implying facts that aren't there. There's nothing in the Food and Drug Act or regulations putting a duty on Health Canada to protect our health or to act in the public interest. And it's just their messaging, even their name, Health Canada, which is really Orwellian. It's not true. So, and I learned this in court proceedings. So I'm running the True Hope trial. They're charged, I don't know, the trial's maybe 2005, 2006. They're charged with selling a vitamin mineral supplement without a license. And I'll just let you know that the court found as a fact that Health Canada killed a large number of people. Well, I shouldn't say large. We don't know how many. But Health Canada caused deaths by restricting access to this product and acquitted them on the defense of legal necessity, finding it was legally necessary for them to defy Health Canada. So, but I've got an inspector on the stand, and I'm trying to set her up. I think her name was Sandra Jarvis. I'm trying to, and if Sandra, if it wasn't you, if it was, Sheila Wheelock, forgive me here. But anyway, I've got this inspector on the stand, and I'm trying to set her up, create a logical box. So I've got a list of questions. I know she's going to answer yes. She can't not answer yes. And then after she's answered yes to all these questions, I'll have her in this logical box, and I can, ask the zinger question. And one of the questions that I was expecting, surely she's going to answer yes, was something like, well, as a Health Canada inspector, you're there to protect our health. I'm expecting a yes, David. I don't get a yes. So I got to keep my poker face on. I mean, I'm in court here. I can't let the judge know that I didn't like that answer. But I keep circling around trying to get her to agree that as a Health Canada inspector, she's there to protect my health. But you see, she was under oath and she wasn't willing to lie under oath. So she actually educated me and put me in my place. And she said, no, as a Health Canada inspector, I'm not there to protect your health. I'm there to enforce the Food and Drug Act and regulations. Now, of course, I wouldn't ask that question now. I know they're not there to protect our health, and they know they're not there to protect our health. They're there to enforce the Food and Drug Act and regulations. Okay. Well, let's talk. I have to talk about nutrition first, though, because I talked about how our food supply is I think, in my opinion, as toxic as it possibly could be, which has to be by design. None of this is a secret. But it's also, we can't be healthy by eating our food. So, David, I'm going to say something. Hopefully I don't lose your viewers, because it's a radical statement, but I think we have to get it out there. And this radical statement is believe it or not, the human body needs certain nutrients to be healthy. There, I've said it. I know that's outlandish, but the reality is not only do we need nutrients, there's nutrients that are called essential nutrients, where if you're lacking a single essential nutrient, you die. And there's, a reasonably long list of these essential nutrients. And before you die, you become chronically sick.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the U.S. Department of Agriculture has, at least since the 1900s, been, regularly surveying our food supply and measuring the amount of nutrients like vitamins and minerals. And I think it was their 1949 report, they sounded the alarm and said you can no longer be healthy by eating right, because the nutrients in our food, and they actually went out of their way and said, if you're missing this nutrient and this nutrient, here's the chronic illness you get. And if you're missing this nutrient and this nutrient, here's the chronic illness you get. It's not a secret. Well, it's gone down and down and down and down. So we're in this position now in Canada where our food supply isn't food anymore. We're the best fed people ever in the history of the world, but we're chronically malnourished because our food doesn't have the essential nutrients that we need to be healthy. So we've long passed the point. If you're not supplementing, you are going to become chronically ill, and you're not going to be at optimum health. Like every Canadian needs to supplement. And please get advice. Don't just go and get a multivite or something. Talk to somebody who knows. They'll want to know what you eat, what your lifestyle is, things like that. But you can't avoid chronic illness, and you can't be actually healthy in Canada now. Well, this is because of Health Canada. It's not a secret. Why aren't they requiring labeling of the essential nutrients and, what should be in our foods, and requiring labeling of them in our foods? Because then the people would be forced to fertilize and grow our food differently. But it's all by design, David. So here, probably most, if not all of our chronic illness is caused by malnutrition and our toxic overload, and or a combination of those two. This is assuming you're not taking a chemical drug. So you go to your doctor isn't even trained to identify nutritional deficiency. Well, of course not, because they're allopathic doctors. If your chronic illness is caused by malnutrition, why would you train the doctor to recognize that the chronic illness is caused by malnutrition? Because then they'll solve the problem with nutrition.
Okay. You believe then that essentially we have a lot of food that is not enabling us to get the proper nutrition we need. And as a result of that, we're malnourished. Many Canadians are unhealthy. They have chronic disease as a result. And part of the solution for that is to have natural products available that you can take. But the government in turn is regulating that out of existence. So that's really a dead end, literally, for our health. Is that what you're getting at?
I agree with all of that, but I'm actually just making the point that Health Canada, this bureaucracy that people trust, is actually managing by design, making our food so that it is toxic and it's not food, and so that all of us are going to become chronically sick if we just eat our food. Even if you're eating organic and eating healthy, you can't be healthy. David, we shouldn't need supplements. We shouldn't have to take vitamins. We shouldn't have to take minerals.
Right.
That's what food is supposed to have. We're supposed to just be able to eat a normal diet and get everything that we need. And there was a time when that was true. Why isn't it true now? Because we've allowed Health Canada to manage our food supply, and they have deliberately made it toxic and made it so that it's no longer food. And then we're forced into this universal healthcare system with allopathic doctors who are deliberately not trained in nutrition. For the world's greatest health show. So for, 21 days, the Natural Health Product Protection Association broadcast online 10 hours a day, a health show where we were interviewing experts, but ordinary Canadians, and just on this nutrition issue. So I personally interviewed 3 medical doctors, 2 who became homeopathic doctors also. It's fascinating because those 2 both practiced for more than 40 years. One's still practicing. So they're medical doctors, but they're also homeopathic doctors. And they say, my gosh, it's no comparison, the results I get as a homeopathic doctor versus medical. Oh yeah. So now I asked all three of those medical doctors, how much training in nutrition did you get as a medical
Hmm.
doctor? I mean, you take about 8 years of training altogether. Oh, 2 hours, half a day, maybe. They're deliberately not trained in one of our
Hmm.
leading causes of death. And so, just to give you a non-serious example. So, one of the people I interviewed for the World's Greatest Health Show was a young mom who developed restless leg syndrome. That's what the doctor diagnosed her with. And so, what would happen with her, as she explains, was when she went to bed at night and laid down, it would be like she was getting electric shocks in both legs, and then the muscles are
Hmm.
twitching,
Hmm.
and it's quite uncomfortable. And the only way she could stop it was by walking. So she's up all night walking. Well, she's now getting depressed. She's getting sick because her immune system's wrecked. She's actually losing the ability to care for her two young children. And she goes to her medical doctor. And her medical doctor said, "We got restless leg syndrome. We don't have a specific treatment for that. So I'll prescribe for you a Parkinson's drug." Now, she looks into the side effects of this Parkinson's drug, and she's horrified, and she's actually not willing to go on it.
Hmm.
So she ends up going to a naturopathic doctor who just said, "Yeah, you need magnesium." And like in 24 hours, it's solved. Now, I was sharing her story with other medical practitioners, naturopathic doctors and
Hmm.
all of this. And it's kind of like, when you're just sharing something that's so well known, like, why are you even bringing it up, Shawn? Like, of course, you go to a health food store and you've got restless
Hmm.
leg syndrome. They're going to get, like, everyone knows except the medical doctors.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, how many young moms with restless leg syndrome are having their lives destroyed with Parkinson's drugs with
Hmm.
horrible side effects that likely will lead to other issues because the
Oh.
doctors don't know?
So you're saying that we need to provide choice of natural remedies because there's a system here that is providing solutions for some people, but for some people, it's not working. So to take away that choice is not is a huge problem. And the government, the Health Canada, is regulating out of existence those natural health remedies. That's the bottom line here, right?
Well, yeah, and the bottom line is it's illegal to share these stories. So like somebody like Karen Peters, well, the naturopathic doctor knows the story, the manufacturers know the stories, but they can't share them or Health Canada will shut them down.
And why is it illegal to share those stories?
Because if people knew that they didn't have to be suffering in our medical system, that they could find hope. Like you watch that health show, there's people that were totally
Right.
disabled.
Yeah.
There are people that are only alive. Like, it's funny. We had one person, a high up in Health Canada, who, at the time of her story
Hmm.
testified how, her life is saved by a natural
Okay.
remedy.
But why? Okay. So they're not allowing this type of choice to exist and information. So the assumption is, Shawn, by Health Canada that natural food products are unsafe, period, and you should not go near them. And that's why they're regulating them out of existence. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I mean, because they're classed as drugs, they're presumed to be unsafe and they're presumed not to work. And Health Canada never looks at the benefits. But it's again, they clearly have an agenda to protect the chemical pharmaceutical drugs. But
Oh, I see.
I mean, well, listen, I mean, most of their salaries come from the fees they charge the chemical drug companies for approval. Like on a serious application, the application fee alone is $250,000. Like most of their budget comes from the fees they
I
charge the
see.
chemical drug companies. So they're in a conflict of interest.
Okay.
And,
So your
in
assertion is
court
that
cases,
Health Canada gets its revenues from the drug industry, and that's what's really moves them forward. So they don't have an interest in having any other alternative around. Is that what your thesis is?
in my opinion, the entire drug approval process is an absolute fraud. We had one speaker, Professor Alan Castles from the University of Victoria, sharing that the third leading cause of death in Canada are the antidepressants taken as directed. Now, let me share with you a story. So I'm in a federal court case with Health Canada, and they
Mm-hmm.
bring in an outside expert who's a psychiatrist, and all he does, he runs a company to get psychiatric drugs approved by Health Canada. And under oath, he starts complaining to me how hard it is to get new psychiatric drugs approved because, I've got to give Health Canada 2 double-blind clinical trials showing the drug works, which means that there's a statistical separation between the sugar pill and the drug. That's enough that we pretend that means the drug works. Just ignoring that actually it'll be a very short-term trial because they'll be relying on the placebo effect. And we're just talking about people reporting subjectively, how their symptoms are. So he says, I got to give Health Canada 2 double-blind clinical trials showing the drug works. So right out of the gate, I run 8. I run 8 double-blind clinical trials to get the 2 that I need to show Health Canada the drug works. Now, the other 6, they could be inconclusive. They could show the sugar pill works better than the drug. They could show the drug works better than the sugar pill, but the safety signals are inconvenient. This is a fraud.
Wow.
This is a fraud. Do you know, David, if the drug approval process was, hey, you come to Health Canada and you have us run the double-blind clinical trials and we publish the trial design so people can comment on it and it's public, everyone can see whether it's fake or made to game, and then we're going to hire people you don't even know and they're going to run 2 double-blind clinical trials. I bet you not a single drug would be approved, not a single one.
Wow.
Our system is such a complete absolute fraud. It would shock people if they knew.
Wow.
And that getting to censorship, it's illegal for that chemical drug company to share the 6 failed clinical trials with you. The 2 successful trials will be published by the researchers, so you'll see those. But just like natural health product companies can't and natural practitioners can't share about the successes, you can't share anything but the label claim. So even, people complaining to a chemical drug company about deaths, it's illegal for them to share that information. This protects the chemical drug model. That's our universal healthcare system.
Right. So it sounds like you're really calling for, transparency and accountability in this system that it sounds like you would assert is broken. So I know the U.S. has gone through a similar debate about natural products for health. How did they handle this?
Oh, that's a great question. So the FDA, which is their equivalent, the U.S. equivalent of Health Canada, was playing the same game. So our chemical drug regulations were never intended for natural products, and both Health Canada and the FDA were driving companies out of business, driving products off the market by saying you had to comply with these chemical drug regs, which you can't comply with. And the citizens rebelled in the United States, and Congress was basically forced to hold hearings. How should we regulate ginger tea, vitamin C, things that you actually need to stay healthy? Like, how do we regulate these things? And they concluded, you can't treat them as drugs. That would be absolute idiocy. So they passed what was called the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994, which classifies them as food, which deems them by law to be safe, and which actually states the FDA cannot take one off the market, just on theoretical, we're worried about. No, they actually have to have evidence that that specific product creates a real safety risk. So they class them as foods, presumed by law to be safe, and actually, made it difficult for the FDA to attack them because they saw the problem here.
Okay. Wow.
That we're talking about things with such great benefit and such great need that you better be careful. Well, we had a citizen rebellion. Ours was a little later. It culminated in 1998. And so our Standing Committee of Health held broad consultations because then our health minister was Alan Rock. We had a Liberal government. I think it was Chrétien government. And Alan Rock asked the Standing Committee of Health, tell us how we should regulate these. And broadest consultations in Canadian history, and they said, don't treat them as drugs. And Canadians want increased access. Now, they came up with a whole bunch of recommendations, which I think are lousy, because if you ask a parliamentary committee what to do, they're going to say, well, regulate, because that's their only tool in the toolbox. But they made it clear, don't treat them as drugs, and whatever you do, structure it so Canadians have increased access, not decreased access. Well, Health Canada had a transition team that basically recommended things to Health Canada, don't put it in the drug model and let's structure this so people have increased access. Health Canada didn't like that, so they did nothing, waited a couple of years, appointed a cherry-picked transition team that would tell them what they wanted that said, well, treat them like drugs. And so we passed natural health product regulations, which were in the drug category. We're
Wow.
deemed by law to be unsafe, and we have to prove safety and efficacy and get Health Canada permission
Hmm.
to, give you vital. Most natural products are just vital nutrients that you actually need. And then the icing on the cake, David, aside from the fact we have to get, their permission, it's illegal in Canada. They've got what's called recommended daily allowances. If you follow those, you will die. But we can't sell you vitamin C or vitamin D, anything
Hmm.
above the recommended daily allowance. So it's basically illegal for the natural health product community to sell you nutrients with a dosage label recommendation that actually would allow you to be healthy. So unless you're getting
Okay.
advice from somebody else saying ignore the label, and that in itself is criminal. Like,
Wow.
vitamin D. This time of year, we're not getting enough vitamin D. It's
Hmm.
essential not just for your immune system, but for other things. I mean,
All
a
right.
study came out this week on how, if you've had a heart attack, if, you're at a certain level of vitamin D in your blood, your chances of a second
Hmm.
heart attack are, reduced by 50%.
You presented a petition in Ottawa. What was that about? And where do we stand now in terms of the government's effort to really, in effect, regulate out of existence natural products?
So we delivered the third largest paper petition. We delivered 153,000 signatures calling on the government to pass the health charter into existence.
Hmm.
Now, the MP Blaine Culkins that we gave that to, we said don't enter it yet because we've just had a mail strike and we're going to have a
Mm.
whole bunch in the mail. So we still have to
Hmm.
process those. Likely, we won't ask him now to enter it until the new year because we're going to lose that news cycle. And then it's up to the government to pass it. And so we need a whole bunch of pressure. If your people viewing don't
Hmm.
know about the NHPPA, it's nhppa.org. We have a newsletter. Please subscribe because that's when we tell you what to do. Like right now,
Okay.
there's a private members bill in Parliament. Second reading debate began this week, and it will move us. Health Canada snuck us into basically the same category as the dangerous prescription drugs in the
Hmm.
2023 budget. And the penalties
Okay.
went up from $5,000 to $5 million and things like that.
Wow.
And so this is just to move us back. But
Hmm.
we need people to support it. We actually got this
Okay.
bill into committee last Parliament. It's just it died with the election and it got out of
Hmm.
committee. Like, when does that happen? But it
So
only happened because
where's the
people were
hope?
supporting it.
So you've got a petition, and it was advocating in favor of this health charter, and the
Hmm.
key centerpiece to that charter was advocating that government policy enable you to have choices when it comes to
Yeah, basically it
natural
just
food products.
entrenches our health rights and creates a new ministry of wellness to manage these products with an actual legal mandate to protect and promote them. So much like the
Okay.
US, where
All right.
presumed safe, presumed effective, protect and promote. I mean, by and large, we're talking about vital nutrients that we need
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
survive, let alone to thrive.
All right.
And then, natural remedies we've used for hundreds or thousands of years.
Hmm.
Why do we need Health Canada permission? And the reality is a large number of us are only alive because of them
All
and
right.
are only healthy because of them. So
So, as we look to the future, you said citizens can do what? They can sign the petition, they can sign up for your newsletter. What else should they be doing when it comes to, you're teaming up with naturopaths, health food stores right across the country? Is that working? Is it making an impact?
no, we're not big enough yet, which is why, I'm asking everyone to support us. So, subscribe to our newsletter so that when we have these calls to action, in the last parliament, we can track about, let's say, close to 3 million communications that went through us to MPs, and a lot of those paper communications, not just
Okay,
e-letters and the like. Because when we have
very
a
good.
campaign, we'll create e-letters so that it's very easy for you to communicate with your MP. Like literally this campaign now, you just put in your name and postal code and your MP comes up and bang, you send the letter. And we ask you to print it out in that. But the MPs know this is the most important issue that Canadians are interacting with Parliament with.
Hmm.
And yet the Liberals are still against us. The government's against us. So every
Mm-hmm.
party out of government, they support it because they know it's popular.
Mm-hmm.
But the government, for some reason, I don't know, is it this cabinet committee structure where it's hard to reverse policy, David? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you're a policy. I don't know. I can't get it, but
Mm-hmm.
clearly we're not there yet. We need more public support, more interactions with MP. I think it has to be at that point where they just can't ignore us, their offices aren't functioning,
Mm-hmm.
that we're going to actually get them responsive. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know why not. Like, what's wrong with it? Not long ago, we weren't regulated at all. They're not
Mm-hmm.
regulated in the US. They're
Mm-hmm.
like, what? Who's going to lose if we're allowed to do this? Oh, I
Mm-hmm.
think I just answered my own question.
Yeah, right.
But we've got to. It's life and death.
So, Shawn, you're a constitutional lawyer. What's the relationship between health and freedom? And why are you doing this?
Well, isn't the largest freedom sovereignty over our own bodies? Because David, there's only been one group in history, other than Canadians, that haven't had the ability to choose how they're going to prevent illness and how they're going to treat themselves when they're sick. And that class of people we call slaves. Because slavery is just a measure of ownership, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, if you own a house, you can decide to put in a bigger window or take out a wall. If you're
Mm-hmm.
leasing or renting the house, you don't have that right. So when we're talking about, you know, who has control over your body, who gets to make those decisions, I would ask, well, do you have ownership over your own body? Because you can't decide how you're going to prevent yourself from getting sick. And you actually don't have the right to decide how
Mm-hmm.
you're going to treat yourself when you are sick. Health Canada has that decision. So Health Canada is exercising an ownership right over your body. And well, by definition. And so, I find that offensive as a constitutional
Indeed.
lawyer. I think the
Yeah.
government can make recommendations, the government can educate,
Mm-hmm.
but the idea that the government can tell me what to eat and what not to eat and how to
Mm-hmm.
prevent illness and how not to prevent illness. Like, again, make all the recommendations and education you want,
Mm-hmm.
but to actually have that power over me is not consistent
Right.
with freedom.
But Shawn, it's a very powerful statement you made in the fact that healthcare, our health, is intimately related to our freedom, our choices to be able to have autonomy over ourselves. And surely
Hmm.
this is a critical issue then for everyone. And so then my final question, as we kind of wrap up this, frankly, a far reaching case study about regulation and its impact on every Canadian, has to do with Canada itself. Then if Health Canada is regulating all these matters when it relates to our health, why are they then signing an agreement that ties them in with the World Health Organization? Does that make any sense?
Well, I mean, David, I strongly suspect that Canada's health policy is dictated from outside of Canada. And again, I don't understand. Like our power structure is very
Hmm.
complicated. I mean, if you actually read our Constitution, and most Canadians, even though it's the most important document governing their lives, have never read our Constitution, although
Hmm.
we've all been through the public education system. First clue that maybe you should read it is that you've been discouraged from reading it. But our prime minister and cabinet are not the executive. Our constitution is very clear. The king is our executive.
Hmm.
And to assist the king in exercising the king's executive powers, our constitution creates the Privy Council office to run the executive.
Hmm.
Now, while you're a cabinet minister, you are a member of the Privy Council, but the Privy Council office is much bigger than our cabinet.
Indeed.
And
Yeah.
so so who's actually running things? I mean, in so many ways, our system is just window dressing to,
Hmm.
have us believe that we have representative government. Well, we don't.
Hmm.
That we have democracy. Well, actually,
Hmm.
democracy is where you have a direct vote in even minor things. Well, you're never going to have a direct vote in anything important or
Hmm.
anything even minor on the federal level.
Hmm.
It's never going to happen in your lifetime. And representative government is as we pretend that your MP is actually representing the riding. Well, maybe in your lifetime, there'll be one free vote of your MP. If you live to be 80 or 90, maybe once in that time, an MP representing you will be able to vote according to how the MP wants to, as opposed to a party
Hmm.
whip.
Hmm.
And so I don't know, so when you say you're suggesting this is coming from the World Health Organization, David, I don't understand who's even in control of our
Hmm.
country, let alone where our policy's coming. But for sure, our health policy is not responsive to what the citizen wants, and
Hmm.
it's not leading to good health outcomes. The real question that we should be asking is, how do we get the best health outcomes? And have
Hmm.
an honest health policy discussion, just asking that question. How do we get
Indeed.
good health outcomes? We'd be doing things a lot differently.
Hmm. Well, surely many of us would agree that the best healthcare outcomes really relate to our own personal assessment as individuals. And
Hmm.
therefore, individual choice is ultimately what should matter over every other point of regulation, surely.
You know how we know what you're saying is true is, David, who has more of an interest in your health than you? You're motivated to make decisions that you think are really good ones. And
Indeed.
I mean, so I think you said the most important thing.
Well, look, Shawn Buckley, it's been a pleasure to talk with you, and I commend you for all your leadership and hard work.
Thank you, David. Just a pleasure to be on your show and to see you again.
Great to see you. Thank you.
Here at Frontier, we don't receive any government funding. We are nonpartisan and we work for you. Find out more and support this important work by visiting fcpp.org today.
Thank you so much for watching this recent episode. We love your comments and we'd like to hear more from you. If you haven't, make sure you press this bell and subscribe to this channel. Check everything out. We'd love to hear more about your comments.